Hi, my name is Bal Dhillon. This presentation reviews a case study titled Managing Crisis Projects, Tylenol Poisonings. The case study discusses the death of 7 people after taking Johnson & Johnson extra strength Tylenol, which was laced with cyanide. This event gave rise to product tampering. In order to manage this crisis, Johnson & Johnson used various phases that included discovery, assessment, and quantification of the risks. They also focused on containment of potential damage, establishment of a recovery plan, and risk mitigation. James Burke was the CEO, and he was responsible for managing all stakeholders at this company. This event led to Tylenol capsules being reintroduced in November of 1982 in triple seal, tamper-resistant packaging. This crisis was handled well by the company. The questions specific to this case study will now be reviewed. Question 1. When a crisis project occurs, who should be the leader of the crisis team? A crisis control model that organizations can apply in a crisis situation to mitigate effects and sometimes avoid costly disasters consists of 3 components. The basic knowledge, which is the amount of experience, training, and education that designated crisis control managers have, the potential problem analysis, and a strategic plan. Timely, accurate information and effective communications are critical in a crisis. These can be provided by the leader of the project, and in this case, it would be the CEO who is responsible to manage these types of crises. Question 2. Will there be a crisis committee or a crisis project sponsor? A crisis committee should be created, and Johnson & Johnson did implement such a committee. Question 3. How important is effective communication during a crisis? Effective communication is extremely important during a crisis. It is critical to communicate effectively with the appropriate personnel. Regardless of the nature of the event, companies need to be ready to respond to the public, the team, and leaders without delay. Every minute a situation goes unanswered leads to losing trust and goodwill. In this case study, the CEO provided adequate information and was transparent. This allowed Johnson & Johnson to overcome the crisis in an effective manner. Question 4. How important is stakeholder relations management during a crisis? During a crisis, stakeholder relations management is very important. Stakeholders should be involved to assist with problem solving. The engagement will also create trust and transparency. Stakeholders hold the key to the environment in which the organization operates and its subsequent financial and operating performance. Company provided information to all stakeholders in this case study. Question 5. Should a company immediately assume responsibility for a crisis? During a crisis, the way a company responds can either give a company a much-needed image boost or significantly damage its brand, ultimately alienating the customer base and business partners. I think the company needs to assume responsibility in order to find solutions, and this should be done in a reasonable time frame. Immediate, transparent, and effective action by a company builds trust and would aim to minimize the impact of the crisis. Question 6. How important is response time when a crisis occurs? Regardless of the circumstances, every crisis has the potential to negatively impact the company's short and long-term reputation, daily operations, and financial performance. Therefore, timing is essential, so the crisis team should act as soon as possible. In this case study, the company responded immediately, and this case has since become a model for effective corporate crisis management. Question 7. How important is it to show compassion for people that may have been injured? In today's increasingly competitive landscape, more and more companies are realizing that being sustainable is more than an environmental gesture. Fostering positive consumer relations through sustainable initiatives generates brand value and improves a company's image. It makes long-term economic sense. It is very important for the company to display a social conscience, as this gains trust and respect for the company. So proper communication during a crisis is necessary to gain public support. Question 8. How important is it to maintain a paperwork trail? Information which captures who, what, when, and where for a crisis management plan is very important and should be documented by the crisis management team and provided to all those involved. This documentation can also prevent future reoccurrences, as the lessons learned would and should be included. Question 9. How important is it to capture lessons learned? Very important and beneficial as a preventative measure. So the lessons learned can be helpful as a preventative measure, and it's important to know what mistakes were made to avoid them in the future. These are the references for this presentation, and I thank you for listening.